Jai Shachinandan, I am Chaitanya Charan. So I am here with the speed. Okay. So let's begin with this verse. We'll recite the verse. This is the last verse of the 24th chapter. The topic we'll be discussing is today, how free is our free will? That's the topic. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam Te. Means the computer has its own free will now. Okay. Somebody pull the wire from somewhere. We are on Zoom. No signal. Check the external input or select another input. It's strange. It's not moved from there.
Windows P.
No, that only gives the option where the output should go, but the input is not coming then. This is strange. But how did it change suddenly? There is Ugra Karma and there is Tugra Karma. So Tugra Karma is technology related Ugra Karma.
Can we check different?
Sharing. Okay, I stopped the sharing because we were.
No, like stop the output.
How-
The ports are very hard to reach. This port is okay.
Okay, I just have some.
They are kind of under the TV. Oh, but
Okay,
I think it should be a computer. Yeah. Or
Control P is not making any difference.
Windows P.
Yeah, I'm Windows P not making any difference.
Yeah, that's what.
No, but it's not moving.
Turn the TV off and on.
Okay. Hare together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Can we try one thing? Sorry. Can we try one thing? Most of you have your phone. Sorry. Most of you have your phone. So maybe whenever I'm sharing the screen, at that time you can just look at the PowerPoint. So that's the main thing I want to show. So even if this projector doesn't work, so we can just look at the PowerPoint on their phone. Will that be okay? Everybody will have the Zoom link. We don't have to delay it. That's okay too. So this is. Is the screen coming on Zoom now? I'm sharing it there. We can send. Does everybody have the link for the? Display setting.
Yeah. Windows here. Yeah, right here. No, here, right here.
But it was coming and suddenly it went.
We'll check. Is the data
Just one minute.
display?
That's what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Multiple displays. No, it's not even
detecting it's a problem with the teeth.
Now it will work.
Because it's not even detecting the.
Okay. That's okay. If everybody has Zoom, then let's move forward. Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Wait for 2 seconds.
1624.
Windows. Sorry, function. Yeah.
It's not going to duplicate it all.
Yeah, because it's not even detecting. Just one.
Okay. Do you want me to try? You want to try restarting the laptop from here? Will that help?
Is this HDMI port? The input there? Okay.
Okay, let's not delay too much.
One second.
HDMI port.
And you try one the function itself. No. Yeah, now it's No, now it's detecting the display.
No,
so
it's
which
not
one
going
is because previously it will not even allow you to.
No, it was showing that.
No, it will show, but it will not allow.
Now shall we put it back to HDMI 1 because earlier it was.
HDMI 1 is the side, right?
Yeah,
Same, same port.
let's keep it.
No.
How about screen mirroring? Screen mirroring.
That's what we have done. That's what we have duplicate.
No, here instead of HDMI.
No, that
That can
depends.
Let it be then. Let's stop it. You can just. I don't have anything to show. Probably let it be enough. Let's spend a lot of time now. Very good. Leave it. Okay.
No, that needs a different.
Leave it. So let's start. Everybody has got the Zoom link. Okay. Thank you. And sorry for the delay. So let's begin.
Do you at all want to restart the computer?
And let's leave it now. So I don't know how much time it will take more.
Yeah.
So I'll explain the words and then we will recite it a few times and we'll start. Tasmat Shastram. So in Sanskrit, Tasmat and Shastram, the two words ta and sa, when they combine, it becomes, that's a cha you will see in the words. But Tasmat, so Tasmat is therefore, Shastram is scripture, Pramanam te. With that guidance, the Pramanam is the source of authoritative guidance. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam te. Karya Akarya. So action that is to be done, Akarya, that action which is not to be done. Vyavasthitau. Systematically. So, okay, no. Okay. This is a devotional reflex action. Karya vyavasthitau. Gyatva. So Gyatva means after knowing. Shastra Vidhan. So the statement or injunction of scripture, Uktam. So Uktam is as declared in scripture. Okay. That's why. Gyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam. So Karma Kartum. Karma Kartum means do this kind of work. Ihar Hasi. It befits you, it behooves you, it is worthy of you to do that. So essentially what Krishna is saying is, therefore from scripture, by the authority of scripture, know what action is to be done and what is not to be done systematically. And then with that knowledge, act appropriately. So there are two aspects to it, gaining knowledge and acting according to knowledge. Two things Krishna is talking about. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam te. Karya vyavasthitau. Gyatva Shastra Vidhanoktam. Karma Kartum Iharhasi. Tasmat Shastram Pramanam te. Karya vyavasthitau. ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Would you like to recite? Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyavastito ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Thank you. तस्मात् शास्त्रं प्रमाणं ते कार्य कार्य व्यवस्थितौ ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Any of the children would like to try?
Tasmat shastram pramanam te.
Tasmat shastram pramanam te
Karya karya vyavastitau.
karya karya vyavastitau
Jnatva shastra vidhanoktam.
ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं
Karma kartum iharhasi.
कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Yes, please. Thank you. तस्मात् शास्त्रं प्रमाणं ते कार्य कार्य व्यवस्थितौ ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Nice. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Who recited earlier? You recited in the morning? Yes. Okay, you can recite. Tasmat shastram pramanam te karya karya vyavastitau ज्ञात्वा शास्त्रविधानोक्तं कर्म कर्तुम् इहार्हसि. Thank you. Let's start some prayers. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishnaprasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Pasindhubhya Evacha Patanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for your patience till now. For us till we fix things. So we are discussing today on the topic of how free is our free will, and I'm discussing this based on 1624, this last verse of the 16th chapter. So once I was giving a class, and this was to prominently a Western audience, and asked, how many of you believe that we have free will? Most people raised hands. How many of you believe that we don't have free will? A few people raised hand. There's one person who didn't raise hand either. So then I asked him, you didn't raise hand either? He says, I don't have the free will to decide. So then I replied, but is it not deciding also a decision? So actually, if we say that we don't have free will, the denial of free will is also an assertion of free will, isn't it? To deny free will also requires free will. If I take this phone and throw it on the ground, I won't. But if I threw it on the ground, the phone doesn't have any free will to fall. So it can't say, I want to fall, I don't want to fall. It just to make a statement about free will, whether it exists or it does not exist, that itself requires free will. Now, of course, we'll discuss a little later about the extent of free will. But apart from the point of view of simple logic, there is also our daily experience. When we interact with each other, there is a basic sense of responsibility which we have. If we wanted somebody to come for some very urgent appointment, and they're supposed to come at 5 o'clock, and they come at 6:30. So why are you so late? I had no free will. What do you mean you had no free will? I have no. We might just reply, I have no free will. Get out of here. So if somebody comes, we're sitting peaceful, and somebody comes and slaps us. Why do you slap me? I have no free will. Well, I have no free will. I slap you back now. So basic human interactions are based on the foundational assumption that we are responsible for our actions. And to be responsible means there is to some extent free will. We'll discuss the extent. And here also in this verse, Krishna is telling that, therefore, understand according to Shastra what is to be done and what is not to be done, and then act accordingly. So, if God had not given us free will, and then He would tell us, do this and don't do this, that would be an exercise at best in pointlessness. I don't have any free will, so why are you telling me to do something or not do something? And at worst, it would not just be an exercise in pointlessness, it would be an exercise in wickedness. Why? Because suppose somebody has no free will and they do something terrible, and then we punish them for doing something terrible. So according to the laws of the universe, according to the law of karma, we are held accountable for our actions. And this is a universal principle across the world's theistic traditions. The biblical tradition is said, as we sow, so shall we reap. So if we have no free will, and then the actions we do are what we are held accountable for, then the denial of free will ends up turning God into devil. How devil? Because the devil causes suffering to others. So God doesn't give us free will and then holds us accountable. So that doesn't make sense. So we all do have free will. Now, having said that, this particular chapter, the 16th chapter, does anyone know what is the title of the 16th chapter?
Divine.
Yeah?
Divine and
Oh, wonderful. Divine and demoniac natures. Sometimes I present this chapter as there are two kinds of people. Some people are wise and some are otherwise. So there are people who are godly and ungodly. Now, and Krishna says there are two kinds of people. Then he also says that these two kinds of people, the qualities, the godly and the abhijat, godly and ungodly qualities, they're abhijatasya. Abhijatasya means we are born with these qualities. So doesn't that indicate that some people are just born to be godly and some people are born to be ungodly? Some people are born to be divine and some people are born to be demoniac. So does that mean that there's no free will? If we're born with these qualities itself? Well, not exactly. Why? Because how we are born determines our starting point. It doesn't determine our ending point. It determines where we start from. What are the kind of disposition, what are the kind of impressions that we have. So we do, even that those people who are ungodly, those people who are demoniac, even they have free will. To what extent? I'll just discuss it briefly. But when Duryodhana was repeatedly enjoined, requested, instructed that don't antagonize the Pandavas, that will cause the destruction of the whole Kuru dynasty. Can't you understand what is the right thing to do? Every book, every one of our epics has a driving question. The question that drives and defines the entire book. What is the driving question of the Srimad Bhagavatam? Yes.
How to live your life and how to prepare to die.
Yeah, Parikshit Maharaj asked the question. You are on the right track. The duty of a duty of a dying person. What is the duty of a person who is about to die? So the Bhagavata, the Mahabharat's driving question is, what is duty? What is the right thing to do? What is dharma? And that is also the driving question of the Bhagavad Gita. Pruchami tvam dharma sammudha cheta. So when Duryodhan is given some advice, some wisdom about dharma, about doing the right thing, so he is attributed to have said a verse, Janami dharmam nacha me pravrutti. Janami adharmam nacha me nivrutti. I know what is the right thing to do, but I don't feel like doing it. I know what is the wrong thing to do, but I don't feel like giving it up. Now, does this mean that some people are wired to be bad? Let's start with the question. Say, do you think people are basically good or people are basically bad? How many of you think people are basically good? Very few. Okay. How many of you think people are basically bad? Okay. Okay. How many of you think that some people are basically bad? Both means?
Good and bad.
Okay, so you're saying that in all people there is good and bad. But are some people inherently bad? Or nobody is inherently bad? So circumstantially, but not inherently. Okay, good point. So
when you say people, are you referring to the Atma or the body?
well, by people I'm referring to embodied beings. Yeah. Who are innately or basically bad. Okay, that's an interesting point. So, like for example, if there are some people who are sociopaths or psychopaths, they do terrible things. They brutalize, they victimize, they murder, and they do it without any feeling of remorse. I mean, they will even do it with a sadistic glee. What is a sadist? Yeah, once I mentioned the sadist. I was talking about sadist throughout the class, and then at the end, one person came and said, "Is a sadist a person who is sad?" So it's a sadist who gets joy in making others miserable. So there are people like this also, unfortunately. So that would seem to say that some people are innately bad. So the Gita explains this in a Gita's God wisdom says that that basically there are two levels of innateness, we can say. What's happening here? Today Tugra Karma is really high. Okay, can you see the shared screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but my screen is... This is also frozen now. That's amazing. Okay, let me stop this. Why are there two of the same thing over? Sorry. It's not meant to work. Laptop? Okay. Yes, that is like a Indian solution to a Western problem, you know?
Microsoft solution.
Oh, really? Just restart. Okay, that's nice. Okay, let's do that.
Are you restarting?
Yeah.
Then the TV can give it another try.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to get on Zoom also. Reclaim host. Okay, good. Thank you. So, by the guidance of devotees, we hope to have overcome Tugra Karma now. Okay, so this is, I was talking about these two levels of innateness. Can you see this? Okay. The soul, okay, this is the body is. Now, inside us, what is there? Inside there are multiple things. So there is the mind and there is the soul. So the mind can have a propensity for vice. The mind can sometimes be good, sometimes be bad. It depends on the impressions. But the soul is always pure. The soul always has a deep potential for virtue. And that's why innateness is something which is multi-level. If we consider in the world, there are many schools of thought about human nature, but prominently there are two. There is the Christian worldview, broadly Judeo-Christian, but Christian worldview, it says that we are inherently sinful. And without the saving grace of Jesus or of the chosen Messiah, whoever it is, there is no hope for us. We are inherently sinful. And opposed to that is the leftist ideology. The leftist ideology is that people are inherently good, society makes them bad. And why is somebody a criminal? Oh, because they grew up in poverty. Oh, because their parents neglected them. Because they were bullied in their childhood. Because XYZ. So one ideology is people are inherently bad. The other is that people are inherently good, society makes them bad. So there is truth in both of these. We can say that the circumstances make people bad. Well, yes, but not always. Some of the greatest inspirational stories are of people rising above their circumstances. Two people may be born in the same situation, maybe very tough neighborhood, maybe abusive parents, maybe bullying in childhood, and all kind of things. But one of them becomes a criminal, other person becomes a respectable citizen who contributes to society. So, are we determined by circumstances? Well, partially, not entirely. So, this idea that are we innately good or innately bad, the Gita explains that it's not monolithic. Innately, there are multiple levels. So, at the level of soul, we are all good. So, broadly, we can say generally we consider human nature, there is good and there is bad. But it's not like 50-50. So there is the demoniac nature when it says abhijatasya bharata, that they are born with demoniac qualities. What it means is that their mind, their subtle body, has impressions from the past lives which are predominantly negative. That means they're inclined to be short-tempered, they're inclined to be greedy, they're inclined to be envious, inclined. That's how they are. However, in no one is this ungodly nature 100%. It may be very high, it may be 70, 80, 90, 95, 99%. But the soul's spiritual potential is never completely obscured. But this is the ungodly nature, where the dark side is. How many of you understood when I said the dark side? So Star Wars talks about it quite a bit, isn't it? So probably the dark side is like a constant temptation. And the main storyline of the dark side is how Anakin Skywalker becomes Darth Vader. And then he is redeemed by Luke. Luke, right? His son, yeah. So the idea is that this is not just something in religious culture. It is even in popular culture. That there is a dark side. I don't think Star Wars uses the word bright side or so much, isn't it? Light side. They use the word light. Light side they use also? Light side. Okay. What did you say? Sorry? They use it from light side also. Okay, fine. Good. So this idea is there even in popular culture, that there are different sides within the human person. So this is the evil nature, and then the ungodly nature, we could say, the demoniac nature, the godly nature. So the godly nature is where prominent is good, but still there is evil. Now if we combine the two levels of innateness, then it works like this, that The soul in everyone is pure, but the conditioning is primarily in the subtle body. It may not always manifest in the gross body. Some people, they look like thugs, but the most dangerous criminals are those who don't look like criminals at all. So that's why we lower our guard and we trust them, and then they backstab us. So that's why the inherent characteristics, that means the conditionings, may not manifest at the gross level. Ravana was a 10-headed monster, but Kamsa was in a human body. Duryodhana was in a human body. Duryodhana didn't have horns coming out of his head or his teeth coming out. So the conditionings are present in the mind, and that's why we see that the ungodly nature is the mind or the subtle body. I'm using the mind as a shorthand for the subtle body. It includes ego and mental also, but let's keep it simple. So depending on with what nature we are born, then we all have a particular nature. That means you could be godly or ungodly. And then there is the possibility for transformation. That is the journey of purification. That we may have the darkness within us, the evil within us, but that is the conditioning. But as we become purified, what happens is that conditioning starts decreasing. And eventually we become more and more purified. We'll see the dark side is decreasing, and then the bright side is increasing more and more. So that is what is meant to happen by the path of bhakti. And one of the defining characteristics of bhakti is that everybody can practice bhakti. Mam hi partha vyapashritya, Krishna says, everyone can be purified. Yepi supapayonaya. Everybody, te piyanti param gati. They can attain the supreme destination. That 9:32 in the Gita. So, how free is our free will? If that is the question, yes, for those who have very heavy negative conditionings, their free will is significantly limited. But it is never taken. But it is always there. The extent, like in the morning, I gave the example of an upside down ball. So that upside down ball is like the sky is an upside down ball in which the wind moves. So some of us may have a ball which is very small, so we can't do much. Some of us may have a huge ball around us. That means we can do a lot of things. But still, everybody has free will. And when we talk about this free will, Duryodhana says that I know what is dharma, I don't feel like doing it. In fact, later on, or earlier, we'll come back to this a little later. So, when the Pandavas have their kingdom and the Kauravas have their, Duryodhana and his brothers have their own kingdom. The Pandavas are ruling Indraprastha and the Kauravas are ruling Hastinapur. So at that time, Shakuni comes with Duryodhana to Dhritarashtra and he says, "Oh king, console your son. He is in unbearable distress." Dhritarashtra is actually very attached to Duryodhana. And we'll talk about the concept of attachment also a little later, what it means. So he says, "Oh, what's the matter?" The one characteristic of attachment is, see, there is affection and there is attachment. When we are affectionate towards someone, if they are in distress, we also feel distress. At least we feel concerned. What's wrong? And that's just human nature. If one person is suffering, like somebody in the hospital is crying in pain, and another person is maybe doing FaceTime with someone else, not even noticing it. You say, what kind of heartlessness is this? So we need to have concern for others. So concern is important, but attachment means that our concern for others, our concern for others overpowers our own values. That means in order to please the other person or in order to not displease the other person, we will do anything which may even violate our own values. So that is the nature of attachment. Yes, we want to help others, but that just because I want to help someone doesn't mean just want to please someone. That doesn't mean that I start acting unethically. I start doing something which is going to harm a third person. Dhritarashtra, he said, oh, Duryodhana, what is the matter? He said, what has made you unhappy? He said, I have just heard news of the increasing prosperity of the Pandavas. And that has made me miserable. Dhritarashtra says, how does their prosperity make any difference to you? Sometimes when some people are speaking something, they speak it, like if somebody, somebody's preaching, somebody's giving us philosophical class, therefore God exists, Are you trying to convince others or are you trying to convince yourself? because like that. So Dhritarashtra is speaking this to what reason how does their prosperity matter to you? He says, you have palaces, you have armies, you have elephants, you have followers, you have everything that people aspire for. He's saying this, but he is not convinced himself. Because he also craves for the full kingdom. He's saying this. And then, at that time, Duryodhana says that, no, what human being can be happy when his rival is prospering more than him? What human being can be happy when his rival is prospering more than him? So which anartha does this statement indicate? Envy. Envy and respect are actually the same. The only difference is respect is offered willingly and happily. Envy is offered unwillingly and unhappily. Envy is respect offered unwillingly and unhappily. That is all. So what happens here is that he says, I just cannot be happy as long as the Pandavas are flourishing more than me. And somebody says, I cannot be happy. He says, later on, this theme comes up when Krishna goes as Shanti Dut, as the peace messenger to Duryodhana. And all the Kuru elders are advising, just settle for peace with the Pandavas. Even the sages have told him before. And Krishna offers the most accommodating peace proposal, just 5 villages. And what is Duryodhana's response? See, initially when everybody is criticizing him, why are you so adamant? He says, why are you blaming me? He says, everyone acts according to their nature. Water flows according to its nature down towards the ground. So I act according to my nature. If this is the nature given to me by the Creator, you should be blaming the Creator, not me. There is this word rationalize. What is the spelling of rationalize? RATIONALLIES. Rational lies. When we rationalize, we tell rational lies. So we use our intelligence, we misuse our intelligence to tell lies that we believe ourselves or that we want others to believe. That's rationalize. So he's saying that this is the nature that the Creator has given me. And therefore don't blame me. Okay, let's try to examine this logic. Now what does he do after that? Krishna says that just settle for 5 villages. So it's interesting, the 5 Pandavas are united like the 5 fingers of a hand. And yet, they don't ask for 1 village, 5 villages. Now, every individual as they grow up, they need their space. And just because we need space doesn't mean that we don't have a bonding with others. We don't care for others. So the 5, all of them are Kshatriyas, so they all need their jurisdiction. It's why 5 villages. But anyway, the point is that what is Duryodhana's response? Yeah, I won't give you enough space to put even the tip of a needle through. Now, we may have heard this, maybe we have seen this, and it's a nice dialogue. But the gravity of the insult in that statement, sometimes it may not register in us. Let's take an example to illustrate it. Suppose we invite somebody for a program and they don't want to come. So they make some excuse. See, they are making an excuse. We know that they are making an excuse, and they know that we know that they are making an excuse. But at least they have the politeness to try to make an excuse. Suppose we invite somebody for a program, and they say, "Oh, come to your program. Even if I die, my dead body will never come to your program." Now, if somebody is saying that, that is not just no to that request, no to that invitation. It's like a slamming the door in the face of the person. It's a vehement rejection of the person and everything that person stands for. So this, if somebody says, okay, by nature, I'm not attracted to spirituality, I'm not attracted to God, I don't want to be a part of it, that's fine. But this kind of vehement expression is not something that somebody is bound to do. I hope this difference is being clear. See, Duryodhana could have said, this is my nature, I don't want to settle for peace. Okay, you don't want to settle for peace, that's not your inclination, that's fine. But deliberately provoking somebody, deliberately insulting somebody who has come with a proposal, that is not something which you can say is just your condition. We all have our conditionings, but we all act often worse than our conditionings. So yes, there are certain actions which we just not consider. Say for example, now somebody is an alcoholic. They say, I just cannot give up alcohol. Okay, you may not be able to give up alcohol. It's possible. I'll come to that. Now there is, even in medical circle, there is a big discussion whether addiction is a moral defect or it's a medical disease. If somebody is addicted, somebody says, I'm alcoholic, I can't give up alcohol. So is it that the person just lacks moral character, lacks willpower, lacks strength? Or is it that person is just diseased? So more and more now the tendency is to treat addiction like a disease. And there is merit to that, but I'll come to that a little later. So the idea is that if somebody says, I'm alcoholic, I just can't do anything about it, I can't give it. Okay, when the urge for alcohol comes, at that time that person may not be able to resist. But does that mean that the urge for alcohol is there all the time at the same level? No. The urge comes. So we all have urges, and the urges have surges. But the surges are not constant. They come and they go. So a person, when the urge for alcohol hits them, they may not be able to give it up. They may not be able to say no. But okay, when that urge is not so strong, what are we doing? What are you doing? No, are you trying to do something respectable, something responsible? Or are you just feeling sorry for yourself? Or are you just dreaming and scheming how I can get the next bottle? It depends. So yes, in certain situations, certain areas, we may not have free will. But that does not mean that we have no free will. There are some people who we just cannot get along with. You know that. Some people, just their very sight seems to annoy us. Not only their sight, just their existence annoys us. So I would ask if any of you know such people. It's a little embarrassing to admit that we know such people at times. But we would think, why did this person annoy me? Somebody asks you, why so hard with this person? Why are you so angry with this person? When we try to give an explanation, that explanation sounds lame even to our own ears. But sometimes we just can't help it. We feel like that. We feel very strongly about it. Okay, we sometimes we can't help our emotions. We just feel particularly. So we can say that our conditionings can explain our emotions, but our conditionings don't excuse our actions. Our conditionings can explain our emotions. Yeah, I just feel so annoyed, feel so angry when I see this person. Yeah, okay, maybe there's some conditioning is there. But that does not mean that I can go and slap that person for no reason. If I do that, then I'm culpable. So Duryodhana could have had an innate envy towards Yudhishthira. And we said, don't be envious. But it's like, if the conditioning is there, what can you do? if a person is alcoholic, he says, don't crave for alcohol. And what do you mean? It's there. I can't do much about it. But just because he had that envy towards Yudhishthir, that didn't mean that he had to scheme. There is weakness. Let me see. Later on, I'll try to find the slide. See, there is weakness and there is wickedness. Weakness is basically hot-headed. Weakness means what? We see somebody who just annoys us and they do something which annoys us even further, and then we lash out at them. Sometimes verbally, sometimes even physically. So that's a moment of weakness when we did something wrong. So generally, weakness is hot-headed. Just something comes over us and we do something, and then why did I do that? We also regret it. But wickedness is not hot-headed. It is cold-blooded. Cold-blooded means that person is not just overcome by impulse. That person schemes, plans, and conspires. And that means it's not that their intelligence is bypassed. I don't know what came over me, I did that. I know very well what I'm doing. I'm doing it deliberately. So let's consider some of the major incidents when Duryodhan antagonized the Pandavas. What was the first incident? Does anyone remember? The Mahabharata. First incident when Duryodhan tried to attack the Pandavas. Poisoning Bhima. Now, was that hot-headed or cold-blooded? Cold-blooded. How? How can we say that? It's a whole plan. It was not just that, like Duryodhan was eating food somewhere. Sorry, Bhima was eating food, and Bhima just went somewhere, and Duryodhan said, "Oh, there's a poison over. Let me drop some poison." It was not like that. It was he made a whole plan. He invited, let's go for a feast. And he says, Duryodhan, so Duryodhan said to Bhima, I know you love food, so I made a special feast for you. I'll feed you personally. And at this time, he was barely a teenager. Some people say that it is Shakuni who spoiled Duryodhan. Well, not exactly. Duryodhan was bad, Shakuni made him worse. And that is the proof. And what is the proof of that? That this whole plan to poison Bhima by Duryodhan, was done without Shakuni's involvement. Shakuni came later. So the point I'm making is he is not hot-headed, he is cold-blooded. And being cold-blooded is not a result of conditioning. It is a result of choice. Now, as I said, whenever we see someone, we might feel angry, we might feel greedy, we might feel envious. Our conditionings can explain our emotions, but they don't excuse our actions. Because from emotions to actions is a significant journey. It is not just actions happen automatically, especially actions that are planned, that are calculated. They don't happen automatically. So we may not have free will about how we feel about certain things, but we do have free will about how we act in regard to those things. So Duryodhan could very well have said, no, I just can't accept the Pandavas' prosperity, so I can't settle for peace. But for him to say that, I won't accept it with the tip of a needle, I won't give enough land to fit the tip of a needle, that is not just his conditioning speaking. That is his cold-bloodedness speaking. That is, he is deliberately provoking. And on top of that, he tried to arrest Krishna. That is just to understand, get a sense of how egregious, how outrageous that action is. Say two countries are at war. Now currently Russia and Ukraine are at war. Say India and China, suppose there is a war. And then there's some attempt for peace. Maybe the Indian defense secretary meets with the Chinese defense secretary, or the Indian commander meets the Chinese commander. Suppose the Indian prime minister goes to meet the Chinese premier. Now, the higher the rank of the person who is going on the peace mission, that indicates that they're taking the peace mission seriously. If the Ukrainian premier goes to Russia to meet the Russian premier, and then that indicates that they're taking it very seriously. And suppose the Indian premier goes to meet the Chinese premier, and China tries to arrest the Indian at that time. That would set all of India on fire. It's an insult to the whole country. So this is something which he did it knowing this was not hot-headed. This was a cold-blooded plan. So Duryodhan may have been born with an ungodly nature. Abhijatasya. We may be born with a particular nature. But that nature, the nature we are born with, does not control us. It has some influence on us. It pushes us in particular directions. But we always have the free will to push back. We always have the free will to counter push. So when Krishna came with a peace proposal, Duryodhan had the free will to accept that peace proposal. Unfortunately, he chose not to accept it. And that was the cause of his ruination. The conditioning he was born with was not the cause of his ruination. The choices he made were the cause of his ruination. Yes, for some people, for whom the dark side is much more, the dark conditionings are more, the right choices may be more difficult. And that's why our scriptures are not 1-0. No, there are Puranas for people in Sattva-guna. There are scriptures for Puranas for people in Rajoguna. There are scriptures for people in Tamoguna. Somebody may say, I can't give up meat eating. Then, okay, then there are rituals involving the worship of the goddess that somebody can offer meat and take meat also. That's not what is the recommended standard. But there is room for even people who have certain conditions. Like even in the practice of bhakti, yes, if somebody wants to practice bhakti at a very serious committed level, they are expected to follow the 4 regulative principles, which involves no meat eating. But just because if somebody says, I can't give up meat eating, that doesn't mean they can't practice bhakti. They can still practice bhakti and they can still grow spiritually. So, whatever be the level of conditioning that we have, bhakti allows us to start even with those conditionings. In fact, Krishna's mercy can summarize that. Krishna's mercy is what? It is from our place, at our pace, access Krishna's grace. From our place. Okay, wherever we may Rajoguna, Tamoguna, we may be anywhere. From our place, at our pace. Not everybody will want to grow towards Krishna at the same pace. Okay, at your pace. Somebody chanting 1 round, that's fine. Somebody chanting 16 rounds, that's wonderful. And Srila Prabhupada came in the West, he came in 1960s. Most of the people who became devotees, they were serious devotees. At that time, they when moved into the temple, they gave up everything. And Prabhupada welcomed them. When Prabhupada came back to India, or went back to India at that time, many people became fascinated by the fact that this American Swamiji has brought American disciples, Western disciples. But they didn't really become committed disciples. So Prabhupada created a platform for them. He called it life membership. At that time, in the 1970s, ISKCON was such a sensation that there were many people. One devotee recently sent me a picture that there was some Indian lawyer. He had a series of degrees on his nameplate. And in that degrees on the nameplate, he had put ISKCON life member. Because at that time, it was such a prestigious thing. It was a glamorous thing. So these people were not interested in chanting 16 rounds or anything like that. But Prabhupada created a place for them. Okay, you stay connected, you make some financial contribution, you have the facility to come and stay in the temple, and then you can grow at your pace. So from your place, at your pace, access God's grace. So this is the mercy of Krishna. So Krishna didn't tell Duryodhan that you have to give up everything. He didn't tell you that, why are you being so evil? Okay, this is what you want, you can have that. Just give the Pandavas 5 villages. So Krishna extended himself to Duryodhan. And then Duryodhan said, no, it was not his conditionings. It was his choice. So we always have, if somebody like Duryodhan has free will, then we also have free will. The scope of the free will may be limited, but bhakti can act even within that tiny scope. I'll conclude with 2 examples, and then we'll have some questions later. So I was talking with one devotee, I was in Australia, in Melbourne. He says, I met one person, he says, I go regularly to the temple. Oh, wonderful, how regularly? He says, once a year on Janmashtami. So now somebody says, what is that regularity? But from that person's perspective, once a year I'm going to temple. My friends here don't even go once in 10 years. So I'm better than them. Well, you may say, what is that? Well, okay, yeah, it's good at least once a year. There's some pious sentiment is there. So what is happening is at least that level of connection is there. And maybe that connection will increase. Nowadays, digitally, the temple can come to our homes and have darshan. So many things. That level of connection is also, it's not great, but it's better than having no connection at all. So if at least that person feels, oh no, this is Krishna's appearance day, Krishna's birthday, I should go to the temple. Through that connection, gradually it will grow. And if they just have a favorable attitude towards Krishna, when some difficulties will come, maybe they will turn towards Krishna. I had a friend in my college who was an atheist, and I used to have a lot of arguments with him. Sometimes when I look back at the way I used to speak and argue, sometimes I feel that how should I put it, that many of my friends, some of my friends became devotees. I was the first in our college at that time who started practicing bhakti. So some of my friends did start practicing bhakti. But I think now, look back, and many of my other friends didn't practice bhakti because of me. Because what happens is sometimes when you are new, you feel as if you know everything. I remember one of my friends was there. He used to, we were together in college, and we got a job in the same company. And then, so I would get in the bus stop near the temple. I would get in the bus. It was a company bus. And then about 2 stops later, he would get in. And then during the bus, I used to think, all these people are just materialistic karmis. I would just chant or hear, not talk with anyone at all. So one day, this friend of mine made the terrible mistake of asking me, what are you doing? And then I looked at my watch. I said, 40 minutes. In 40 minutes, I gave like a complete 6-session Bhagavad Gita crash course. You're not the body, you're the soul. God exists, and to not believe in God is irrational. And the spiritual world exists, and only Krishna is God, and sense gratification is a source of misery. And all religions are good, but Krishna consciousness is the best. It's by the end of, around 40 minutes, my eyes were reeling. But I was in ecstasy. Oh, I gave such a crash course. Only thing I didn't realize, he had crashed because of that. Then after that, I didn't work in the company. I just worked for a few months. But then after that, I would get in the bus, and then his stop would come. He would come to the bus, peep in and see where I'm sitting, and come in from the other door. So in fact, now that friend is based in Seattle. I met him recently. We had a good laugh. His sister has become a devotee, and she undid the damage that I did to him. So the point I was making through this is that sometimes we try to push people at a pace that they are not ready for, and just because they're not ready to grow does not mean that they're not interested spiritually. So from Krishna's, Prabhupada created this form of life membership. So from your place, at your pace. So not everybody has that spiritual inclination, or to give them the benefit or the spiritual capacity to take bhakti at a very fast pace. But that doesn't mean they can't take it up at all. When they have some positive appreciation, some basic connection, that will grow gradually. So everybody has free will. If somebody says, I have no free will, then that is a mistake. Either they are misunderstanding or they are rationalizing so that they don't do something. But everybody has free will. And when we are trying to grow spiritually, there may be certain conditioning you just not be able to give up. What to do about that, we'll talk in a future session. But okay, some particular conditioning I can't give up, well, don't bother about it right now. Just put it in the back burner and focus on what we can do in bhakti. And similarly with those people who we are trying to connect with bhakti. Sometimes we just feel, okay, I'm inviting them to come to the temple. They're just not coming to the temple. Okay. Then maybe we can just share some video links with them, maybe share some articles with them. Or maybe invited them to some seva online. You have artistic tendency. Can you just design this poster? maybe they will do something like that. They don't mind it. They just have that ability. It's just a few minutes work for them. So from their place, at their pace. So even when somebody is not turning towards Krishna, it doesn't make them bad. That just makes them that they may not be ready the way we expect them to be ready. So our sensitivity should be to see what they are ready for right now and offer them that. And to some extent, that sensitivity, we need to, that understanding attitude we can have with ourselves also. Some areas it may just take too much work. And if it can't work right now, focus on the areas where we can work. And in a later session, I'll talk about how bhakti can actually further free our free will. But in this session, the theme was, if you want to summarize this in one sentence, is that our conditions can explain our emotions, but then remember the next part. It doesn't. The conditions don't excuse our actions. Okay. So I'll summarize. I spoke 4 points mainly. A topic was how free is our free will. So from a intuitive perspective, from an intuitive logical perspective, from a relational perspective, we always consider each other responsible for our actions. And from the Bhagavad Gita 16:24, Krishna is telling, do this and don't do this. That indicates that we do have free will. But then Krishna also said that some people are born demoniac, some people are born divine. What does that mean? So born means, is it the way we are born doesn't mean that's the way we have to live. Because that conditioning is a part of who we are. There are 2 levels of innate. So the Christian ideology is that, Christian theology is that we are innately evil. Without God's grace, we can't be saved. Whereas the leftists say that actually we are good, society makes us bad. But the Vedic understanding, Gita's understanding, that we are both innately good and possibly innately bad also. The level of the soul, we are innately good. At the level of the subtle body, the mind, it depends on the kind of impressions we have. Some of us may have darker impressions, and that means our nature is ungodly. Some of us may have brighter impressions, and our nature is godly. But whatever be the nature, we can move towards virtue, towards goodness. And with respect to Duryodhana, maybe he couldn't help his envy of Yudhishthir, but that would only have made him hot-headed. But when he became cold-blooded, conspiring to destroy the Pandavas, that was not a result of conditioning. That was a result of choice. So when he tried to arrest Krishna, that was not just his instinctive rejection of the proposal. That was his deliberate provocation of the Pandavas, deliberate insult of the Pandavas. So our conditionings may limit certain choices for us, but that doesn't mean all our choices are limited. So we work in the areas where we can, and gradually we will be able to improve. So Krishna gives Shastras also at a multiple level. So from our place, at our pace, we can access Krishna's grace. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any reflections, questions, comments? Yes, Manandru.
This is topic I've been struggling with for some time. So where is the boundary between conditioning and misuse of the will? So with that the line you said, does it mean that all actions are all improper actions are misuse of the will? Or can hot-headedness lead impels one to some actions which are therefore result of conditioning and not just misuse of the will?
See, which actions are a result of conditioning, which actions are a result of misuse of free will?
Or doesn't identify.
Yeah, it's difficult. It requires honesty and it requires self-observation. It's like, say, somebody is badly injured. Sometimes it's very helpful to understand the mind by comparing with the body. Not always, but sometimes. Say somebody has a terrible accident, and maybe their arms are fractured, their legs are fractured, they're immobilized, and fortunately, they have surgery, they survive, they recover. Now, at what point what is the point when they start exercising their limbs, when they start trying to exercise their hands, they start exercising their legs, they start trying to walk. It's very difficult for somebody externally to say that. The doctor may say, now you're fit enough to walk. I say, no, the pain is too much. And what happens is, with all our medical advancement, we don't have anything like a painometer. The patient says, I'm in pain. The doctor says, see, the reading is low, there's no pain. You're just lying. You cannot do like that. Now, of course, you can say that the fracture is this much severe, therefore the pain must be this much. And some inference can be made. But pain is an internal emotion. And it is based on some physical injury also. But my point is that ultimately, if the patient doesn't want to get well, the patient can get excuses. Oh, there's so much pain over there. What can I do? So even physical recovery from severe injuries, it requires that honesty. That now, so that's why that person has to decide. Yes, there are certain things I may just not be able to do, but I should do what I can do. Now, maybe if I'm in so much pain that I cannot get up and walk, but maybe I can sit up. Let me try to sit. Even that may cause pain, but maybe that pain is bearable. So there can be some external help, but without that internal will to change, that person can very easily justify their pain can use their pain as a justification to continuing to lie in the sick bed. In fact, there is this word, hypochondriac. People who pretend to be sick. Now, why would somebody pretend to that? Because maybe they like the attention. Maybe they just like others to take care of them or whatever it is. So that is, now generally speaking, when somebody is hypochondriac, they know that they are pretending. But sometimes some people, they don't even know that. They're not consciously putting on act. They just feel I can't do it. So that honesty is required. Honesty and self-observation is required in general. Now, with respect to our conditionings, this is where the talk on bhakti which we'll be having, how bhakti, you could say, frees our free will. There's one more point which I want to talk about, destiny. I talked about Krishna's will. I have not talked so much about destiny. I'll be talking about destiny. Then we'll go to about how bhakti frees our free will. But one important point is that generally, if we are to overcome any conditionings, just like if we are to overcome any sickness, we have to have a strong reason to do that. Why do you want to recover? Whether it is physical recovery or emotional recovery, or I could say psychic recovery, or recovery from conditionings. We need to have a purpose. We need to have a strong desire. And this is where sometimes our philosophy can be misunderstood. Like sometimes we say, oh, desires, you should give up desires. Desires are the cause of bondage. And decrease in desires is good. Well, yes and no. Depression, one of the defining characteristics of depression is the absence of the desire to do anything. So one of the sometimes depression can be a medical condition, and at that time we need some medical intervention. But generally, the medical intervention alone won't solve the problem. That person has to get the desire to do something. Start with some small desire. Nowadays, with respect to people who are depressed, there is equine therapy. Go to a stable and take care of a horse. So our devotees in various places are starting bovine therapy. You go and do go seva, and you take care of a cow. So you find that even I, no matter what kind of problems I may have, how terrible person might be, how terrible life has been, I can do something. I can take care of this cow, and this cow appreciates it. The cows are sensitive animals. Once we start reciprocating with them, and slowly, I want to reciprocate with this person, with this being. Then the desire will expand. So in general, to be released from our conditionings, or to free ourselves from our conditionings, we need to have at least one reason, one cause why we want to be free. And that's why bhakti focuses not so much on giving up worldly desires as on taking up spiritual desires. So the more we have, Okay, I want to do this service. Suppose I want to wake up in the morning. You may want to say, why do I want to wake up in the morning? Or to chant early. But chanting is so boring. Chanting is so exhausting. Chanting is so distracting. Better I don't wake up. But suppose, maybe we like music. And, we make it a plan that I like to sing. I like to practice this musical instrument. I like to use this instrument for Krishna service. So I'll wake up in the morning and 10 minutes, if I wake up at this time, 10 minutes, I'll practice the music instrument. Oh, then I'll do it. And then maybe we can chant, we can do other things after that. So what we need to do is we need to focus more on creating spiritual desire, on nurturing spiritual desire or higher desire in general. And then that will give us the power to overcome lower desires. So otherwise, it's very difficult to know what is due to our conditioning and what is due to our misuse of free will. Okay. Thank you. Yes. We'll come to you. Yeah.
You mentioned about that example, your experience when you were telling your friend on the bus, gave him a crash course in 40 minutes. Now, as part of my service, I interact with a lot of new people trying to bring them to Krishna consciousness, introduce them to the various programs that they do. And I have to interact with them and many times give a kind of a crash course. Because they have so many questions, people who are new. Some of them don't know me at all, so I'm like a stranger and it's a different level, but some people know me in a different context. And so I relate to them in that way, but then ultimately the way I'm trying to bring them to this or give them an exposure and, invite them to Krishna consciousness. So like from your experience from back then to now, what do you think, like if you meet a person who is coming forward and asking, why are you doing this? Why don't you eat this? Or why are you chanting or whatever? What would you suggest now that we do?
If somebody is asking questions themselves, definitely you should answer. Now, there are different ways in you can answer, in which you can, when questions are asked. I try to classify those ways. They're not watertight categories, but they're broad understandings. Classify them as prescriptive, normative, and descriptive. Prescriptive means you should do this, you should not do this. That just doesn't work with people today. Who are you to tell me to do this? See, the postmodern ethos, we've gone beyond modern time now. We are in postmodern times. So postmodern ethos is that, what is that? Something like, I accept no authority, except the authority of my own experience. Just the instinctive rejection of authority. It is one of the characteristics of postmodern authority. So who are you to tell me I should do this, I should not do this? The normative is, this is right, this is wrong. So like with respect to meat eating is bad, being vegetarian is good. So both of these don't work. They just trigger the rebellious tendency in people. But the third is the descriptive. Descriptive means, this is what I do and this is why I do it. So for example, we can say that, I came to know I came to know how much the animals suffer in the slaughterhouses. I interacted with some animals. I saw that they are conscious beings like us. And they feel so much pain. I didn't want to be a part of that. So explain a reason that they can understand and explain it from a personal perspective, not a judgmental perspective. So now they may accept it, they may not accept it, but they won't feel threatened by it. So when we make it prescriptive or normative, then it's like intruding into their territory. If you do that, then immediately their defenses rise. But it's descriptive. See, there is a lot of curiosity among people today with the ethos of multiculturalism and inclusivism. There is a diversity. These are values because which people are very open. See, there is cultural curiosity and there is cultural commitment. What happens is, as soon as someone shows a little cultural curiosity, we start demanding cultural commitment immediately. Why do you eat this kind of food? You should also give up eating meat. Hey, I never asked you for any advice about what I should eat. I just asked you, what did you do? What do you do? So we can actually channel people's cultural curiosity by explaining things in a descriptive way. But what happens when it becomes prescriptive or normative? Then we are demanding cultural commitment. Or not in commitment, you can say cultural conformity. I'm doing this, you should do this. And we say, this is not I am saying it, it's scriptures are saying. But they are not accepting the authority of scripture right now. So we can't demand that from them. So just try to be descriptive in presenting. So that's one thing. Second thing is that very often we think of what this person is doing or not doing in their relationship with Krishna. Or this person is not chanting, this person is eating meat, this person is doing this person is doing that. And yes, that is one thing which you need to look at. But if we try to understand that person carefully, Krishna consciousness is not just seeing what that person is doing in relationship with Krishna. Krishna consciousness is also trying to see what Krishna is doing in this person's life. Krishna is present as the Paramatma in everyone's heart. Sarvasya chaham hridisannivishto. And Krishna is acting in everyone's life. They may not be aware of it, they may not even be concerned about it. But if we try to understand, okay, this person, they may say, I had this experience and I went here and I did this. So just dismissing all as a mundane experiences, try to see, okay, in this person has got this insight. And then see if we can connect that insight with something spiritual. So try to see what Krishna is doing in their lives. If we see it that way, then our mood will also become more humble and service-oriented. It's not that we are making that person into a devotee. That Krishna is already in the heart of that person. Krishna is already taking that person on a journey. How can I take this person one step forward? This aspect of Krishna consciousness. What is Krishna doing in the life of this person? You may say, how can I know? Well, we can't know for sure. But just by trying to understand what is happening in that person's lives, we can see where that person is at. And yes, the fact that that person is now interacting with a devotee, that itself indicates that Krishna has been acting in that person's life. And not that just, okay, now that the person becomes a devotee, I download all of Bhakti. No. Just see, okay, where that person is at and give them what they can connect with. Prabhupada, when he was in America, he stayed initially at the house of Sally and Gopal Agarwal. And it's interesting, the Sally Agarwal, her experience with Prabhupada, they are written. So one of the things he says is that Swamiji was curious about everything American. How we use the vacuum cleaner, how we use the fridge. But Prabhupada did not come to America to learn about American ways. He did not come to America to learn how to use the vacuum cleaner. But what Prabhupada was trying to understand was how American people think, how they function. By that, he could plan how to give Krishna to them. So, that way, approaching people with an open attitude, trying to understand what is going on in their life, can help us connect them more with Krishna. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
So, you were mentioning that which is free will, like often with cold-blooded, but oftentimes, like if you go to the alcohol example, then someone has felt this urge many times. Then in the future, then he might make a plan to, like even when he's not feeling the urge, he'll go and stop by the store to buy the alcohol. So, but that's because many times in the past.
Correct.
So then, is that considered like he's misusing his free will? But then it's also due to like feeling that urge many times, even though he's doing the action when that desire for alcohol is not present at that moment. He's sort of to be present later.
It's a good question. If somebody is taking alcohol repeatedly, then when they later on go out of their way to seek alcohol also. So is that their choice or is that a conditioning? Yeah, it's difficult to say. I had given this example in the morning class. Is it visible or what happened? Yeah. So I talked about the snow pebble at the top. Okay, this can be for gossip, but this can be for anything else also. Is it visible? Oh. What's wrong? Okay. I'm going to stop this. Yeah. Now. Sorry, let's remove gossip from here. So what happens is, you can see at the top, it is just a snow pebble. as it keeps rolling down, it becomes bigger and bigger. It becomes a snowball, then it becomes a snow boulder. So when somebody starts indulging, it is very small at that time. But then as they keep indulging, it becomes repeated, it becomes reinforced. And then it's a craving that hits almost irresistible, that person addiction. So it's very difficult to decide from an external perspective, whether that person did that because of conditioning or because of choice. Even for that person also, it may be very difficult. That's why, in general, with respect to the indulgence, with that particular weakness that a person has, it's better put that aside. Avoid judgment with respect to that. Okay, you did that, that's okay. But what are you doing in between? This will be the topic as a future class. But the summary that even if we can't resist our urges, we can persist between our urges. Once that person gets that alcohol, you can't do anything about it. Maybe it's true. But it's not that it hits constantly. It's not that I just completed one drink and immediately I have to start scheming about when I'll get the next. It's possible that the desire may come, but you don't have to do that. Okay, for 6 hours, I don't have that urge. What I will do those 6 hours? So let's focus on that. Sometimes it's very difficult to resist the urge. But what can we do between the urges? Okay, that's where we start. And as we keep working on that, we'll gain more strength. I'll talk about this more in the next session. Thank you. Yes.
To see the previous slide, the journey of
Transformation.
So in the purified soul, I see some dark side of it.
Okay, I said almost pure soul. This one, no?
Right. So
This-
purified soul is the dark side, right?
Okay. So I'm saying by purified, I'm not saying pure till now. It's a person who's getting purified on the journey of purification. I'm not saying they're completely pure. They're being purified. So but the point is that it's decreased from what is compared to earlier. So
So what are the characteristics of the purified soul? So how we can identify the soul is pure?
well, first, most important is that bhakti pareshanu viraktir anyatra cha. If somebody is actually experiencing God, then that experience is so fulfilling that one no longer craves for other experiences, sensory experiences, mundane experiences. They don't crave for it. It's not that they are averse to it and they will deliberately avoid it, but they will not crave for it. So now, how much a person is experiencing God, that could be seen maybe by Ashtasattvic Vikara there. That's a person goes into ecstasy, their hair stands on end, and things like that. But those are imitable symptoms. Somebody can artificially imitate them also. But what is non-imitable is described in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that for example, avyartha kalatva. That a person doesn't waste any time. This is all the time Krishna service. Namagani sadaruchi. That person has a constant desire to glorify Krishna. And not constant desire, constant taste for glorifying Krishna. Then samutkanta, eagerness for Krishna. Then that person is not agitated in the presence of worldly objects. Okay, they're there, they'll come, they will go, doesn't matter. So if you read, I think, I don't remember, it's like maybe 15th or 14th, one of the later chapters of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar of Devotion, there these ecstatic symptoms are described, the hair standing on end, a person dancing ecstasy, but the non-ecstatic symptoms are also described. Non-ecstatic are more consistent symptoms. And if you look at Srila Prabhupada's life, he exhibited those symptoms. And not all the symptoms may be present in the devotees around us. Even some of those symptoms are present, that indicates that these are serious devotees. So that if we get into the zone of trying to identify who is pure and who is not yet pure, that is not a very productive thing. Because how will we discern it? But if we can just understand, okay, surely this devotee is more devoted to Krishna than I am. And the association of this devotee inspires me to become more devoted. Then let me take that association and increase my devotion. Okay? Thank you. Yes. Do I have the free will to say no? I can ask.
Name, form, qualities, activities, there is no difference. Everything is same, right? One and same. holy name of the Lord might be Shubhanam or Namamosa, but why do a devotee wants to see the Lord face to face? Then on the absolute plane, everything is said. There is absolutely no difference. When we chant the
Okay.
name of the Lord, the pure name,
Good
then
point.
we should be satisfied actually, right? But
Mm.
something
Yeah.
is lacking, and the insufficiency is there. Some insufficiency. Why devotees feel like that? Until
Okay.
the heart is very satisfied until they see the Lord, until you have darshan of the Lord. It might be under darshan or body darshan, face to face.
Yeah, that's true. So if Krishna's name and his personality, his personal presence are not different, then why do even great devotees want to not see the Lord? Why are they satisfied simply by absorbing themselves in the holy name of the Lord? Yes, almost every aspect of our philosophy has this characters of bhed and abhed, achintya bheda abhed. At one level, yes, Krishna's name and Krishna as a person are not different. But at another level, there is a difference because Krishna as a person can be served in multifarious ways. But the name can't be served. See, the gopis, they are considered to be the topmost devotees. And when they are separated from Krishna, because Krishna has to go to Mathura and then Dwarka, they are heartbroken. They too experience Krishna's presence by talking about him, Tava kathamrutam tapta jivanam. They experience Krishna's katha and they feel it's like amruta. But at the same time, they long for Krishna's presence. Because when Krishna is present, they can serve him. They can cook for him. They can do shringar for him. They can please him. They can dance for him. They can please him in various ways. That they can't do with simply Krishna Katha or Krishna's holy name. So a devotee may understand that Krishna and his various manifestations are not different. But not all his manifestations can be served in the same way. That's one point. And that's why a devotee wants to experience Krishna in various manifestations. Or in particular manifestation, Krishna as a person. Another thing is that Krishna is a person. And Krishna as a person reveals himself in different ways to different devotees. So yes, Krishna is not different from the Bhagavatam. Krishna is not different from the Holy Name. Krishna is not different from the deities. But Krishna may reveal himself more as the Holy Name to one devotee and more as the Bhagavatam to another devotee. Krishna may reveal himself as through the deities to another devotee. And then that devotee, some devotees, they may be chanting, but they're longing, when can I go to the temple and do deity worship? Some devotees, they may chant, but they're longing, when can I start studying the Bhagavatam? Why? Because that is where they are experiencing Krishna. And that's wonderful. Anywhere we experience Krishna, when we feel that connection, we feel that taste, we feel that strength that comes from experiencing Krishna, we need to be grateful for that. So it is both the desire to serve of the devotees and also Krishna's personal choice to reveal himself in various ways. And of course, Krishna's personal choice to reveal himself in various ways may also relate with our particular interests. Somebody has natural musical interest, then they may be able to experience Krishna through music much more than through philosophy. Somebody has a naturally intellectual nature. They used to read a lot of books and discuss concepts. They may not find so much taste in kirtans. But when there are serious philosophical discussions and classes, they may love that. So that means Krishna's individuality, our individuality, and the desire of a devotee to serve. That's why a devotee may want to experience Krishna in some manifestation other than in which they are currently experiencing Krishna. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna. Can we come back to you? Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question to that. So, Krishna does reveal himself to us in different forms, but for example, like the initiation vows we take, right? Like we take a vow to do Harinam Japa, right, every day for the rest of our life, but we don't take a vow to read the Bhagavatam every day for the rest of our life. It's a good aspiration. Same thing with deity worship, but specifically we take that vow to do Harinam Japa, right? So does it mean that is a more elevated way of, experiencing Krishna? Or, like, there's a devotee who does, for example, offers Arti three times a day or something like that, it does their daily worship, will they get the same benefit as one who does that Hainam Japa? Or is there
Okay.
just curious about that?
Yeah, so we take a vow about chanting, but not about other limbs of bhakti. So is somebody who does Aarti 3 times a day, will they get the same benefit as somebody who doing Harinam Japa regularly? First of all, bhakti is not mathematical. That I did this much Krishna, you have to reward me this much now. It doesn't work like that. It's personal, it's reciprocal. So broadly speaking, we can experience Krishna through any limb of bhakti. And Krishna can reveal himself through any limb of bhakti. Having said that, generally in the bhakti tradition, the connection with Krishna is through a representative of Krishna. Through, say, in our case, it's Srila Prabhupada. We are followers of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, but we are in the, so you could say, Prabhupada Anugas. We are the followers of Prabhupada. So if we are choosing to align with a particular path, then we need to follow the guidelines of that path. So if we could visualize this as, see, the bottom of the mountain is material consciousness. The top of the mountain is spiritual consciousness. Now there could be many different ways in which one may go from the bottom to the top. Can I please give me a minute if I can find this? What was it? No. So to go from the bottom to the top, so this is the bottom of the mountain is material consciousness. The top of the mountain is spiritual consciousness. Now, in general, there are various traditions within the Vedic path, even outside the Vedic path. Their purpose is to take us from material consciousness to spiritual consciousness. And there could be multiple paths. So, however, if we take one path, okay, some paths might be a little more slippery, some paths might be a little more rocky, some paths might be a little marshy, some paths might be snowy. Different paths can have different obstacles. So we need the appropriate resources. So if we are going to take a particular path up the mountain, then we need to follow that trek guide. So yes, through various limbs, in Sri Vaishnavism, for example, or in Madhva Vaishnavism to some extent, again, they are not monolithic. There are different Vaishnava traditions. Even Madhvacharyas, Vaishnava followers also, there are significant differences. But maybe they emphasize more on deity worship. Or sometimes they emphasize more on doing homa, yajnas. That's possible. But so that is the path that they have taken up the mountain. So in that path, this is what is required. In the path that we are taking, these are the requirements. So in principle, any of these limbs of bhakti can take us to the top of the mountain. But in practice, if we are choosing a particular path, then we need to follow the guidelines of the spiritual guide for that path. Because bhakti is not mechanical. It's not, as I said, it's not mathematical or mechanical. Mathematical means I done this much, Krishna, you have to give me this much. And mechanical means if I do this, this will automatically happen. It's not automatic. When we do this, we please Krishna. And one of the easiest, the fastest ways to please Krishna is by pleasing his devotees, pleasing his representatives. So that's why it's a personal reciprocation. And that's why if Srila Prabhupada has emphasized 16 rounds, so we follow 16 rounds. Other limbs of bhakti, if Krishna is giving us taste in that, that's wonderful. Then maybe we can take that taste from kirtan, from puja, and then use that taste or use the strength coming from that taste to chant the holy names. So there's one devotee I know, he loves Shastra. He says that when my mind starts wandering, instead of letting it wander everywhere, I start dwelling on the verses of the Bhagavad. I said, that's a wonderful distraction. A distraction, but it's a wonderful distraction. So maybe that's not the best. You can just focus on the holy name, but if you can't, is distracted, at least get recited the holy name. So what, to the verse of the Bhagavatam. So if somebody likes puja, that's where their primary strength comes from. And while doing the japa, they can dwell on their particular deities that they're doing puja. So letting the mind wander everywhere, go over there. So that's how you can connect the limb we have taste for, the limb of bhakti that we have taste for, with the limb of bhakti that we are expected to or committed to practice. Okay. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes. Jai Chaitanya Prabhu, how much time should I go on? Okay, how many questions do we have as such? Yeah, how much time should I go on? How many questions are there? Okay, yes, Prabhu. Yes, please. Only 1,000. Okay, yeah, sure.
One question actually on this goddess names, I have asked so many devotees that they must not be answered that see, we are suffering in this material world and we are obviously suffering. So we don't know what we have done in the previous birth or previous or years was that we don't know. So why Krishna actually does that? Because Krishna only gives knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. Right? So Krishna, in this situation, Krishna has given us the forgetfulness so that we do not recognize what they have done in the previous lives.
Okay.
The suffering has been given now, and the bija, puta, and all these things I understand. But
Yeah.
why Krishna gives doesn't give the punishment immediately, so that we know that we
Okay.
have done this mistake and we are suffering right now, so that we are not going to do that mistake again in our lives. So why this happens?
So why do we get suffering for actions that we don't even know that we did? Why not have the sufferings coming immediately? And that way we'll know what we did wrong and we'll fix it. Yeah, it is a question that I have pondered also a lot, and I cannot say that I have a thoroughly convincing answer, but I've talked with many devotees. I tried to search for answer in many books, scriptural commentaries. So I'll talk about 4 points for this. First is from my direct experience. I wrote a book on reincarnation, demystifying reincarnation. There were 25-30 fascinating cases of children, especially children, who remember their past lives. And after I completed that book, then somehow that time I didn't get this question, but afterwards I got that question that how many of these children who remembered their previous lives were spiritually inclined or became spiritually inclined? It was amazing. Zero, not one of them. And yeah, there was a part of me which lived before, but this is the real life now. This is what I want to live. So knowledge of one's previous life didn't really make them spiritually interested or inclined. In fact, there was one person, Thomas, I forget, maybe I may not get the names right. This person claimed that he was the captain of the Titanic when the Titanic sank. I think his name was Thomas Andrews or something like that. And he said that actually the Titanic was designed improperly. And I pointed it out, but the main financier didn't listen to me. And when the ship sank, he escaped and he blamed me for mismanaging it. So now he gave a lot of good factual evidence about how the Titanic sank, what happened. So it seems that it's a reasonably reliable account. But when he says this, this person is William Barnes. That was Thomas Andrews, something like that. So this William Barnes says that the mission of my life is to clear the good name of Thomas Andrews. It's not to think, I reincarnated. Who's the soul? It's just so. So it doesn't change. So just knowledge doesn't necessarily lead to spirituality, spiritual interest or spiritual inclination, or even personal character transformation. That's the first point. Second point is that Gahana karmano gati. Karma is complicated in the sense that it is not that one action always leads to one consequence. Sometimes it is depicted like that for the purpose of illustration. But sometimes one action may be so severe that it may lead to a lifetime of consequences. So, or conversely, sometimes one consequence may be a result of multiple actions in the past. So, if every action that we do, if at that time we started remembering whatever caused that, we would have a cognitive overload. Say, for example, if I'm walking along and I slip and fall. Now, why did I slip and fall? Maybe there's some little water over here. Now, that level of explanation is sufficient for me. There's water over here and I slipped and fell. Now, I could go further and say, okay, why was that water over there? Maybe in a previous life, I spilled water in somebody's path, and now this water is spilled in my path. So, but every incident, if we start trying to go at every incident can be explained at multiple levels. So, every incident that we start scaling to a higher level, we will just not be able to function. So, this was going to come in my next class, but let me come here right now. Probably this one, part 2. Oh no, not this one. This one also has to be. Yeah, changing our frame of reference. Yeah. See, something simple happens. Say, for example, if I am feeling cold. Now, that same incident can be explained at various levels. Maybe my clothes are not warm enough. Maybe the windows here are not shut properly. Maybe it's winter. Maybe you can see this, isn't it? Maybe this part of the world is very cold. And maybe there's climate change because of which the weather has changed. And maybe this world is the color. So if a guest comes to our house and they say they're not able to sleep at night, they say, I'm feeling very cold. What to do, Prabhu? This world is Dukhalaya. This world is a place of distress. No, that is not the level we should go to. Okay, do you want some more blankets? So the idea is that every event, its cause can extend to a very large level. And each of these could be a valid explanation. But the point is, which is the constructive explanation? So for most of us, for most of the times, escalating a small event to a big level, actually that is not mentally healthy. Say, for example, somebody is very prone to depression. They may be drinking a glass of water and the glass of water slips from there. And just now, many of us, sometimes a glass of water might slip from our hands. The water might spill. It might be a little embarrassing. But a person who is very prone to depression, what happens is, they start thinking, if I can't even hold a glass of water, how will I be able to hold my life together? I'm worthless. Well, maybe your hands were wet. That's a simpler explanation. So why go to that level immediately? So in general, if one is not able to find out which level to go to, then it can actually lead to a lot of problems. So that's why I said, for every incident, if we started having a flashback of what all we did when, because of which this happened, we would just have a cognitive overload. We will not be able to function. So building on that point, each life is a new beginning for us. And each life is an opportunity for us, in one sense, not exactly to start with a clean slate, because yes, we have conditionings from the past, but to make a fresh beginning. So the past memory is erased so that we can begin now. And the last point, so that way what happens is we are not burdened by the past too much. And sometimes we may feel knowledge of the past is good, but sometimes too much knowledge of the past can be very troublesome. Sometimes we may feel that we have a poor memory, I can't remember people's names and I can't remember this, I can't remember. And that may be true. But there is an equally serious problem. Some people can't forget things. Like I see someone, 25 years ago you insulted me. Well, it was 25 years ago. But foreign, I just can't forget it. So actually, memory is not always a good thing. So in that sense, the forgetfulness that we have, it's not necessarily a curse. And last point is that we may think that yes, that if I know what I did wrong or why I'm suffering because of what I did wrong, then that will inspire me to reform. That is true, and it is also not true. How is it true? Because if that correlation between action and consequence, between distress and cause, it is to some extent there in this life also. Like somebody drinks a lot and they get a hangover. But does the hangover make them decide I will never drink again? Yeah, maybe for 5 minutes. Till the hangover goes away. So what happens is, just the consequence is not enough to deter a person from the cause, unless there is a will to change. So in general, the whole purpose of karma is not so much retributive as reformative. Retributive means you did this, so you have to suffer this. It's, although we generally say that it's for actions we have consequences, the purpose of karma itself is not retributive. It's reformative. Reformative means that if you change, then you don't have to suffer so much. That's how bhakti minimizes our karma and suffering. That also we'll discuss later. But it's in an ordinary justice system, a person may be sentenced to jail for 25 years. But if they behave well in the jail, that sentence may be curtailed down to 10 years also. So like that, even in this also. So still, having said all this, it is true that when something terrible happens to us, and especially when that terrible seems to be completely undeserved, somebody is lived with very health. Okay, well, this is undeserved. Mute my missiles, please. I hope this doesn't mute me. Okay. Okay. So, having said that, I'm not saying that this is a decisive explanation. Having said that, it is true that when distress comes, that question will naturally come: what did I do to deserve this? So at that time, if we look at our scriptures, the scriptures shift the focus. At a philosophical level, they say that why do bad things happen to good people? It is because of karma. But the focus of scriptures is not so much on telling who did what karma. It is on modeling how to deal with that. That's why they shift the question to, when bad things happen to good people, what do good people do? And that is a much more positive way to move forward. Okay. Thank you. Happy to hear, sir. Happy to hear service. Thank you. Yes, bro, you had a question?
So, chapter 9, verse 26, Krishna says that Tatram Pushpam Phalam Yama Vastape. So if you offer to Krishna, he accepts, and if that the honor that's and you did mention about animal suffering, who a person with a non-devotee and a meat eater mentions about plant suffering, like how best we can answer it.
Okay, good question. Yeah. Jayachandran bro, you want to start serving prasadam? In case question answers want to go on, you don't want to delay everyone. Okay, sure. You can let me know whenever they're ready. Sure. Yeah, it's a fair question that if we say that I'm answering the question, that the question is that if we say that meat eating is bad because animals suffer, then plants also suffer. What about that? Yes, that's true. Well, there are 3 levels at which you could discuss this. First is from a purely scientific perspective. The principle that the nervous system of the plants is far less developed than the nervous system of the animals. And that's why they suffer far less pain. So the principle is we try to minimize pain. We can't avoid pain. And if we could, wonderful, we should do that. But we can't eliminate pain completely. So at least minimize it. And in many cases, if you consider when fruits fall from trees, They will rot if they are not picked. So we're not really causing pain over there. We're not cutting off the tree. We are just taking the fruits from it. Even with respect to crops, normally when we may say we're cutting the tree, cutting the crops, but actually if they're not harvested, they will die. So it's like when the crops come, that is the summit of their life, and otherwise they are going to die. But when we kill animals, it is not when they are old. We grow them so that we can kill them in the prime of their youth. So in terms of the quantity of pain caused, in meat there is huge. In plants it is less, and sometimes it is nil also. Secondly, even from an intuitive sense, if say a school told that we are going to take the children to see a harvesting festival, the parents will have no objection. Wonderful. There is a festive atmosphere. Nature has opened its bounty and humans are celebrating that. But if a school said, we are going to take the children on a field trip to a slaughterhouse, what no, absolutely not. See, we intuitively understand there's a big difference between cutting crops and slitting the throat of a cow or a pig or whatever animal it is. So it's not the same. That's the second point. So first is the nervous system. Second is just our common intuition and our experience. When we say our experience is not complete, animals also experience, plants also experience pain. True, but the degree is much lesser. Now the third point is that our principle is not just eating vegetarian food. We also understand that we are a part of a cosmic cycle. Evam pravartitam chakram, Krishna says that. So we take from nature, we give back to nature. That's why we offer food. So sometimes we offer food, we sometimes make it seem like, it's just like offering food is just like some mystical ritual that will free us from karma. And that may not sound very convincing to most people. That means, you have just got your religious belief that gives you religious insurance from culpability for actions. It's not exactly like that. The idea is we take from the universe, we return to the universe. So when we are offering bhoga to Krishna, when we offer the food to Krishna before we take it, it's not just, deities are not just a karma freeing machine for us. That's not our purpose. It's an expression of, I'm not audible there? Okay. Okay. So if I'm not audible there, please let me know. Not audible? Oh, really? Okay. So it's so do I need to repeat? How much of the answer do I need to repeat? You don't want to repeat because you heard or because you have to finish the class? Okay. So the point. So when we talk about prasad, offering the food to the Lord, we have to present it properly. That the universe is providing us something, and when we offer food to Krishna, it's like our way, our tradition's way of at least symbolically returning to the source what has come from the source. So in that sense, we are participating in the cosmic cycle. We take and we return. So it's just taking prasad is not all that a devotee does. After taking prasad, a devotee tries to do service. Our life is in a mood of service. So that's how we participate holistically in the cosmic cycle. And that's how we take vegetarian food, but it's not just vegetarian food. It's spiritual food. It's spiritualized food. But even if we don't get the second part, third part, it is the first two parts. And both from a scientific perspective and from a experiential perspective, the degree is hugely different. And even if we can't eliminate pain, let's minimize pain. Do we have an option? What other food do we have to eat? If we don't eat, it's like somebody is walking along through a crowded space. And then, we just have to step on somebody's foot because it's so crowded. Okay, I'm going to step on somebody's foot, but I don't have to raise my feet and stamp it down. Isn't it? So, like we cannot live without hurting. But we don't have to maximize the hurt. Let's try to minimize it. Okay? Thank you. Hare Krishna.
So I have last question.
Yeah, I'll come to you. Yes.
Prabhuji, today we discussed conditions don't excuse our actions. Sometimes I feel I don't have the courage to take the right action. So should I overcome or challenge my conditioning, and how to overcome?
Okay. I think that we'll be discussing in a future session.
Like this.
Yeah, but now I'll qualify that statement. I said our conditionings can explain our emotions, but they don't excuse our actions. What I meant by that is that sometimes our emotions, we can't help them, but we have the capacity to restrain our actions. So now how much we restrain, how we restrain, and how we deal with the conditionings, that's a separate subject. But at a physical level, we can curtail our actions. So I may feel angry towards someone, but that emotion of anger I cannot control. But that doesn't mean that it's almost as if that conditioning raises my hand and slaps that person. No, we have that free will. How much free will we have, that is up to us. So we do need to, first thing is, what is that saying? The best way to deal with temptation is to not deal with temptation. What does that mean? That means if we know that there are certain situations which are going to provoke us, certain situations where we are vulnerable, avoid those situations. Yada samharate chayam kurmo angani sarvasya. Krishna says, withdraw your senses from provocative sense objects. So if somebody is an alcoholic and they are trying to recover from alcoholism, don't go to a bar, and certainly don't buy a house above a bar. So avoid provocative situations. If we know some people just bring out the worst within us, then try to avoid being with them. Or if you're going to be with them, try to be with them with someone who will bring us back to our senses, who will keep us alert, grounded. So that is the basic level we can do. So we can't, sometimes if you feel like I can't control my actions also, then we can control the situations that we put ourselves in. It may not be easy, but sometimes that is what is required for our safety. So there are degrees of things which you can do, but how to challenge our conditioning, that we'll discuss in the future session. Okay? Thank you. Yes. Last question. Sorry. No problem, that's fine.
Actually, as long as my understanding is, the Jiva has fallen down to the spiritual. I didn't share the Jiva has fallen down to the spiritual. But actually, when Harikasha was saying, I want to just ask a question. So he mentioned that Jiva, when we were in Alice, so in one of the previous sessions, he mentioned that we have not fallen to Jiva, has not fallen to spiritual. Jiva has fallen to the Brahma Jyoti. Because there's a marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, that is the Shakti. So we are in the Brahma Jyoti only, and we have fallen into the Brahma Jyoti. So I got so much confused. So how to understand that, and where from actually, because I conduct Bhakti Rakshana and I tell people that once upon a time they are Krishna. As a part and parcel of Krishna, they are Krishna only. So we want to enjoy separately from Krishna, so that we have fallen down. So now what should I tell them, and how should I understand what is actually happening?
So we often hear that the Jiva has fallen from the spiritual world. But recently I heard from a class that from Hari Parshad Prabhu that the Jiva has come from Brahma Jyoti, not from the spiritual world. So we have been telling in our classes to new people that we were with Krishna at one time. So what should we do? Well, this question is like an intellectual banana peel. As soon as you step on it, so it'll fall. That's how it is. So my answer to it is threefold. I had talked about this with Hari Parshad. Both of us are in the Shastric Advisory Council together. So he's a close friend of mine. Basically, if you look at the history of our Sampradaya, Jiva Goswami in the Sandarbhas, Sanskrit can sometimes be interpreted in different ways, but overall, his Sanskrit seems to say that the Jiva doesn't fall from the spiritual world. Jiva Goswami says that. Now, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his writings, says that, now Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given multiple writings. Some places he seems to say, I'm using the word seem because Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote in Bengali, and the Bengali has to be translated. Again, translation is a little problematic in the sense that even different devotee translators may translate in different ways. But Bhaktivinoda Thakur sometimes says that we were with Krishna, but that's rare. His prominent theme should be that we were with the Brahma Jyoti. and he only gives nominal credence to the idea that we were never with, the soul can never fall. Prabhupada seems to more often than not take the position that we were with Krishna and we fell from Krishna, fell from the spiritual world. But Prabhupada has also at several places mentioned that, no, so for example, the fourth canto, when the is it the fourth canto, third canto, where the Kumaras go to the spiritual world and come back? Third canto, yeah. So there in one of the purport, Prabhupada said, therefore the conclusion is that nobody falls from the spiritual world. So Prabhupada has also said multiple statements. Now, what has happened is, within our movement, one set of statements of Prabhupada have become standardized. That the statement where Prabhupada said that the soul has fallen from the spiritual. So Prabhupada did say that at times. Prabhupada also said that soul never falls. And Prabhupada sometimes said that, no, this question is inconceivable. Prabhupada says, how did we fall from Krishna? Prabhupada said, when you go back to Krishna, you can ask him. Prabhupada said that also. So, when our acharyas have taken multiple positions on an issue, how do we deal with that? So, there are broadly two ways. One is we may take one acharya's position and follow it and accept that and teach that. That is also one way of being faithful. Now, when we are taking one acharya's position, it is also important for us to not declare another acharya's position wrong. We may say, this is what my understanding is, and this is the basis for my understanding. And we can give some logical basis. And logically, to complement what the acharya has said, logically we can say, we can come up with logic to say why the soul can't fall from the spiritual world. We can give logic why the soul fell from the spiritual, both ways. And the intermediate between them is about the Brahmajyoti. So we can take any one of these positions based on our conviction, based on our in spiritual life. When we say we have to follow the Shastra, follow the Guru Sadhu Shastra, many times following Guru Sadhu Shastra is not like one line. It is one direction. It's not so much like a ray of light as a beam of light. And within that beam of light, there can be multiple rays of light. Recently, I was talking with one devotee, one senior devotee, and he made a statement which initially I thought was very outrageous, but actually it was very insightful. We often say, Srila Prabhupada build a house in which the whole world can live. He said, Srila Prabhupada build a house in which the whole world can fight. Now, what he meant by that was that he was not saying that we should be fighting over here, but even when we are fighting, we can stay inside the same house. Because we are fighting, we don't have to leave the house. So there can be intellectual differences of opinion between acharyas. There can be differences of opinion among devotees. So what we should not do is demonize some other devotee's opinion. Yeah, that devotee also has some basis for it. We may have some problem with that basis, but let's not get involved in that. And overall, the key point, whether we were with Krishna or not, the key point is that going toward Krishna can make us happier, not just happier, but can make us better human beings, can improve the quality of our life. And going away from Krishna can make our life worse. It can make us worse human beings. So let's focus on that. Whether we were originally with Krishna or not, this is a question which, as far as I can see, will never have an answer that will satisfy everyone.
Two things, Prabhuji. First of all, I got so much disappointed that we are now with Krishna once upon a time, and the original constitutional position is the Brahmajyoti. And now, when we realize, our
No. So that's why I said this. That is one position. If that's all these three answers have basis in not in Shastra, but in the sadhus. In our tradition, all these three answers have basis. So you don't have to accept that position as the definitive position that we were in Brahmajyoti only. If that is disturbing you, fine, then take the position what Prabhupada has given and share that where it is needed. Don't emphasize that all the time in normal classes. So in this case, some devotee, as I said, a particular devotee may be convinced about a particular position. That's fine. That's their conviction.
going back to God means all then.
Oh, no, back to- No. No. But there are two different things over here. constitutional position is that we are parts of Krishna. Mamai Mamisho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhutaha Sanatanaha. We are eternally the parts of Krishna. And we have the potential to unite with Krishna. So we can go back to Krishna. That doesn't mean Brahmajyoti. We can go back to Krishna and have a loving relationship. So whether we were in Brahmajyoti, whether we were in the material world, whether we were Krishna, the fact is no Acharya has said, and I'm quite sure about this with respect to the Gaudiya Sampradaya, no Acharya has said that there are some souls who can never go back to Krishna. That is not the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya's position at all. So wherever we are from, we all have the potential to go back to Krishna.
Going back to Krishna means going to his.
Going to Krishna's personal abode. That is not a, I don't think, from what I talked with Hariparshad or any of the other devotees who are far more aggressive propagators of some other school of thought over here, none of them say that we don't have the potential to go back to Krishna. That is definitely not there. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki, Gaur Premanande.
Hare Krishna. So there are 4 more sessions. This is like an appetizer. Sunday feast tomorrow, which you will be in London. There's evening program at 5 p.m. And then Monday there's 11:30 a.m. 11:30 a.m. and a 5 p.m. evening program. So 4 more classes to go. So he has some books that he wants to share if you want to get more. So we would like to ask the devotees to kind of maybe create lines, please. So put the instruments over to the side and then create space. And then we need some devotees to help. No.
So
He wants to talk about the books.
you can finish your announcements, please.
I'm not going to stop that. It's organizing. So we need some help for servers, those that want to serve out the plates. Okay.
Please. So much of what I spoke today is based on these 2 books that I have written. This is, yeah.
Hare Krishna. Please pay attention to Prabhuji.
1 minute, I won't take much time. So much of what I spoke today is from these 2 books. This is Relishing Bhagavad Gita. This is more from the Krishna-Arjuna relationship that is revealed through the Bhagavad Gita. And this is Bhagavad Gita Insights, which answers common questions which we may have when we read the Bhagavad Gita. What does detachment mean? Will it make me hard-hearted? When we say, what is Maya exactly? Does it mean everything is illusion? What is the scope of free will, like we discussed? These are questions that are answered. There are 100 articles with about 80 illustrations. And one devotee asked me after the previous program whether I can sign the book. I'm happy to do that if you want it. And this is 365 codes based on the Bhagavad Gita, inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. So each page has 1 code. You can shift each one day. And it can be kept on the desktop as an easy access to the Bhagavad Gita's wisdom for yourself and for your colleagues and friends. So these 3 are available behind. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
We'll have another temple tomorrow show, right?
Sure.
Once again, if lines can be formed, please, and if you can bring the